Hello, this is Janet from janetsandberg.com, and you're listening to the Phoenix Wisdom Podcast, the weekly show that talks to peers and professionals who open up about their darkest moments when they felt like ending it all, why they didn't, and how they transformed their lives in order to triumph over the darkness and despair. Please remember to subscribe if you'd like to hear more inspiring stories. Hello and welcome to Phoenix Wisdom. Here today we have Sarah Haas, who is bringing us a little different perspective today. She has faced her own mortality, but not through a self-inflicted way of thinking about it, but through something else. And I'll let her tell us all about that. But why don't you just start, Sarah, and introduce yourself a little bit?
Well, first of all, Janet, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to be on your show. And I think what you're doing is so amazing and so important. And I just feel like you're so right in that we all have to talk about and share our struggles. And then that gives other people permission to do the same.
Mhm.
And not talking is is detrimental to our health and to our well-being and our quality of life. And when we can open up and talk about it and sort of let that flow, I think we can all be so much healthier and happier. So thank you so much for having me today.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. And we were just talking a little bit before we started recording here, and yeah, I'm just excited about everything that you're going to share with us today. So, why don't you start by telling us about your own um, journey with life and death?
Yeah. Yeah. So about 3 years ago, I was in my late 40s. I'm just in my early 50s now. And I, out of the blue, got diagnosed with breast cancer. And I am an integrative nutrition health coach. I'm a certified personal trainer. I'm super healthy, super active. Of course, just never dreamed that I would ever be someone with cancer. I didn't have any of, no family history. No, it just came out of the blue. And to say that knocked me for a loop would be, an understatement. It was devastating. It was such a shock, so unbelievable. And fortunately, I'm cancer free now. I am completely healthy and I have it behind me, but it was not an easy time. I had a stage 2 cancer, so that meant that it had spread to my lymph nodes, which made it very, very scary because they have to scan every body part and make sure, that it hasn't gone anywhere else, and all the waiting is just grueling. Um, and then I had 20 rounds of chemotherapy. I had 25 rounds of radiation and I had 3 surgeries. And
Mhm.
after all that, I'm cancer free. But it was definitely it's a physical struggle. People talk about chemotherapy and that it's hard on your if you feel horrible. I mean, you're just not yourself. It has so many side effects and it's just brutal.
Mhm.
But for me, the physical part was nothing compared to the mental and emotional side of it. That was 10 times harder. Just the fear. And I have 2 kids. I have my daughter had just started college, and I have a son in high school, and I'm a single mom.
Mhm.
And anyone who's a mother knows that, that's your whole reason for being, your whole reason for existing. And just the thought of not being around for them and because I imagine being a grandmother someday and watching them,
Yeah, of
blossom through
course.
life and have kids. And yeah, so just grappling every day with those fears and walking through the 2 years. It took me 2 years to complete all those different treatments and not knowing, like, is this even going to be worth it? Am I doing all this? Am I, n- knocking my body down to ground zero for nothing? Or is it going to be worth it? Is it going to work? And thankfully it did work. And now I'm on the other side of it. But the other aspect is I also have struggled with anxiety and depression for years, 2 decades at least, probably earlier, but undiagnosed until my
Mhm.
20s. And when you have depression and anxiety, and then you have a major life event like that, it makes it that much harder
Yeah.
to get control of your mind and to
To keep it from
survive. Yeah.
spiraling, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
and I did spiral sometimes. I definitely spiraled sometimes. But thankfully, I just had to do the work to get through it. I just had to, I had so many things to help me get through it, not only people, but meditations and, doing my own inner work. And now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm a changed person for the better. But
Mhm.
it's hard. It's, when you're in the middle of it, you don't tend to see it that way.
No, no. It's always easier when you're on the other side. Um, so you said you had people that helped you, you had things to help bring you out of it, and help you get through it. Um, and before we get into that, I just want to say how interesting it is that we're sitting here, talking openly about your cancer journey. And our parents' generation wouldn't do that. Cancer was very hush hush, and you said the word in a whisper, and people didn't talk about it, they just got sick. you know and even when there was a diagnosis, it just wasn't talked about. I don't know
And
why that was, but
especially breast cancer,
right.
because it's a personal body part. And I had a mastectomy and reconstruction. And it's funny because when you tell people you had breast cancer, they involuntarily kind of glance
Look
down
at
at
your
your
boobs.
chest real quick. Yeah, I mean, it's just natural, but now we can talk about it, and I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah,
Yes.
so you're able to get that much more support and help from people. And that's sort of where I want with this podcast, is to take our mental health journey so that eventually we can just do what we're doing here and talk openly about our our mental health struggles and depression and those spiraling thoughts, and have it be normal. It's just a part of our lives that some of us go through. And there's no reason to not talk about it. There's no reason to be ashamed by it, or to feel like you're so alone that you can't, um confide in somebody, or share what you're going through. And yeah, so that's
And
why we're talking about these things. But I just love that parallel of how to see like where we've come with our conversations about cancer and other diseases and physical health. But I know for sure, like just in my own personal experience,
Mhm.
how that has shifted with talking about cancer. And I hope to see that also in my lifetime. And we're on our way to being able to talk about mental health in the same way.
Definitely. And I always feel like anything that stays in the dark grows more powerful. Anytime you stuff something down and you don't let it out, it's going to get stronger and stronger. And that goes for a lot of different things that I've seen in my life. Addiction, for one,
Mhm.
family members or whatever. Addiction is very secretive,
Yeah.
and it can be so damaging, and families that deal with it need to talk about it and need to be open so that it doesn't keep growing and spreading. And that's why you see a lot of addiction get passed down through the generations. Part of it is not being open about it, not being honest about it,
Yeah.
and it applies to so many different things.
Yeah. And it's funny. I was listening to a true crime podcast when I was driving the other day, and she just went off on this rant in the middle of it talking about addiction. Um, Obviously it had come up, in the course of whatever she was talking about, but she's like, I just need to have a moment here and advocate for people talking about addictions, and that, it's a disease, and it's not just poor behavior. And, she's like, we need to talk about it more, kind of a thing. So it's just,
For sure. Yeah,
it's,
it's a mental health
yeah,
disease.
yeah,
And if you sweep it under the rug and don't talk about it, that's how it gets more power, and that's how it sticks around, and that's how it grows. And I think anything that you have to work through, whether you're the person dealing with it or if it's your loved ones or someone around you, you can't work through it just by yourself in silence.
exactly.
You
Yeah.
can't.
And my family being very, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, you don't talk about feelings, you don't talk about health, you don't really talk about anything of substance that matters. So I feel like part of my purpose in being here is to sort of break those long held family patterns. I'm definitely the black sheep of my family in that sense. But even talking about, there's generational trauma on both sides, like for my kids, on their dad's side and on my side. And I've been very open with them, but I had to dig to get that information. Like, it just wasn't talked about. Um, and I had to figure out, why I am the way I am, and the issues and mental health struggles that I've dealt with, and sort of find the trail through the generations to see why that is. And then is a little more open on their dad's side, which was all sort of based on the war. They're Europeans, so they had a lot of issues from, living during the war. But I've just been very open with my kids. I'm like, look, like, I'm sorry that, that this is the way that I am, but there's a reason for it. And there's a reason that you're going to be the way you are. But the more we can be open and talk about these things, the better it's going to be. Like you said, the
Yeah.
less we talk about it, the worse it gets. Uh,
Yeah, and I had to do some of my own digging as well, and finding out that my dad struggled with mental health issues that he was not just ashamed of, but in denial about, and refusing to get help, and that answered a lot of questions for me about things that happened while I was growing up and the ways that he was acting and dealing with things. And it was, he's gone now over 10 years ago, but it takes a long time to uncover all this stuff, and then it's so it takes a load off your back to go, oh, okay, now I understand. It wasn't anything wrong with me that he was acting this way. It was because he had this and this, and that it may be a reason why I struggle with some of these things, these depression and anxiety, because those can be hereditary. And it's just so helpful to have that background information, and it just helps you learn who you are as a person and accept who you are as a person instead of just being ashamed. We live too much in shame.
we do. We do. So, circling back around to you getting healthy again, after your cancer diagnosis. So you were obviously, people knew what you were going through, and you had help and support who were the people that really helped you through that time?
Well, I mean, it was incredible the amount of love and support that I received. My family, of course, my mom, my sister and brother, my kids, of course, those people close to me. My partner, he was also just unbelievable. People driving me to my chemotherapy appointments and taking care of me after surgery. And then so many friends bringing me food. And some of my girlfriends got together and hired a house cleaner for me to keep my house clean, and people that I went to high school with reaching out over social media, and clients, past clients that I hadn't heard from in years, sending me cards and gift cards. And it was just amazing. And I was very open about having cancer and about everything that I was going through. And I shared pretty much my whole journey on social media. So I recorded some really raw videos of how I was feeling and what I was going through. For one thing, I wanted people to be able to keep up with what was going on with me, my friends and my family. And for another, it was cathartic for me. It was almost like a diary, like an online diary. But then also, I just had this really strong feeling that this is happening to you for a reason. Somehow, this experience is going to flow through you and be able to touch other people. And you need to share it so that people can hear your story and see this, because it's going to change other people's lives. And it's so crazy how many people have reached out to me since then that I don't even know, that followed me on social media. And part of it is, going in, being a health coach, and then going through all that and getting completely knocked down on my butt. you
Mhm.
know, I can't eat normally, I can't exercise normally, but I survived all those treatments. And then on the other side, I slowly rebuilt my health. And I've documented this all through the years. I've put videos of me bald and pictures. I've put pictures of some of the scars, nothing, nothing too, not exposing myself too much, but I have a lot of scars like on my back and things like that. Videos of me, trying to work out and trying to get back into things. And I've had so many women reach out and say, I haven't been through your situation, but it's really inspiring to just see how you're starting from nothing and building up slowly, and that it's working, because that's what people want. They're, whatever they're working on,
Mhm.
where when they want something, you can't go from 0 to 100 in one step. You have to do it like little by little, and you have to. So I showed the struggle. I showed the struggle step by step. And I think that it really resonated with a lot of people.
Mhm. And it allowed you to have more people there to support you, even if it's them just sending you a little message on Facebook being like, thinking about you,
Oh,
or,
yeah.
sending you a card in the mail. Like, even those little touches, they help. They buoy us up. And could you imagine, and this is one of the terrible things about depression, is that we isolate, right? Like, we pull back, we don't want to talk to anybody, we don't want to go out. And so nobody sees our struggle. And therefore we also then don't have the support, and then we feel even more isolated, and it circles and it spirals and it just gets worse and worse. But imagine if we could be that open with our mental health struggles. And some people are, but I'm just, a lot of us just tend to isolate, and we don't want to burden people, but then we also don't have the support that we need, because we've let friendships go, and we've distanced ourselves from our high school friends and people like that who could be there for us when we actually need them, but we just don't have the strength to keep that going. And I don't know what the answer is, because it is really hard, when you're deep in the depression and feeling like you just can't put yourself out there in that way. Um, that's one thing we need to figure out. Other
Mm-hmm.
than, like you said, even like people you didn't know very well were reaching out and sending cards and stuff. And I think maybe the onus is more on the healthy people to be like, oh, I haven't heard from Janet in a while. Maybe I should just reach out and say hi. And yeah, I'm going to lie and be like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Thanks for reaching out. And even though they still may not know what I'm going through, the fact that I had that touch, that personal connection with somebody just helps, just that little bit. Um, so
Yeah, and I really relate to what you're saying because, like I said, I have struggled with anxiety and depression, and in the beginning was not open about it, was ashamed, very ashamed. And you don't want to be the Debbie Downer, when people invite you to go somewhere and you don't feel like you're going to be able to be put on that happy face and be upbeat, and you feel like you're going to bring the people down, or they're not going to like you anymore. They're going to see you coming and be like, oh, there she is, she's so depressed, so you feel like you have to just like paste this smile on your face and be great all the time. And for me, the answer was, finding one little place where you can share it to begin with, even if that's a mental health professional,
mhm,
somewhere where you, or a person, it could be a loved one, it could be a parent, a partner, whatever, somebody that you feel really safe and comfortable with, and that you're getting that unconditional love. You're not going to scare them off, and
mhm.
just kind of start small, because it's a process. It's not just you're going to go out and shout it from the rooftops. I have depression. I have anxiety. I'm on medication now. Like I was ashamed of being on medication. And there was such a stigma around that, and especially in the health field, in the integrative nutrition, and alternative therapies. And
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of, well, if you eat healthy and if you do yoga and if you meditate, then you can balance that out for yourself. And so I struggled with that. I don't like to take pills. I want to
Mhm.
be as natural as possible. I want to be clean. I don't want to be dependent on a medication forever. But I got over that.
Yes.
I
Yes.
got over that. I remember going to a doctor and, being adamantly against getting on medication, but I was in talk therapy with a therapist, and she really wanted me to go and get evaluated. And the doctor was like, yeah, I think that you could benefit from getting on some medication. And I was like, well, I just don't want to. Why? I don't want to be reliant. I don't want to be dependent. And he said, well, if you had high blood pressure through no fault of your own, and your doctor wanted to put you on a high blood pressure medication that would improve your health and keep you from having a heart attack, would you take it? And I was like, well, yeah, of course. And he's like, well, your brain chemicals are out of balance. You're doing everything right. You're trying, you're exercising, you're getting sunlight, you're all the things. And this is hereditary. You've inherited this, and the medication is this is an illness, and the medication is going to help you. And he asked me, what percent of the day, or would you say that you are in a bad mood? Because that's kind of how I described it. I was like, I just always feel like I'm in a bad mood. He said, what percentage of the day? And I said, I think about 80%. And just saying that out loud, I was like, oh my
Mm,
goodness, I'm in a bad mood 80% of the time. Why would I live like that? Why would I put myself through that? And then when I started feeling better, I started not being so ashamed of it because when I had girlfriends who I kind of saw signs that they were feeling the way I was feeling, I would just tell them my experience.
mhm. Yeah,
And I got more comfortable with being open about it little by little.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's
and
how you pull yourself out of it. You have to reach out to one person to start with and then keep putting one foot in front of the other until you can reclaim your health.
yeah, yeah. I was the same way with medication, and I had been on antidepressants, before, like 10 years prior, and I didn't like that one. It didn't really do a lot. I didn't like the way I felt when I was on it. Um, so I was just like, well, I'm not going to do that again because, I know what that's like. And,
Mhm.
meanwhile, pharmaceutical advances in 10 years are pretty significant. So the medications, we have now compared to then are fairly different. They keep improving, and it's a slightly different medication that I'm on now, than I was then. And yeah, it totally changed my life, saved my
Yeah.
life, honestly.
Yes.
Um,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. And I will say one thing too, because I hear that a lot from people who, they say, no, I tried medication and I just felt tired all the time, or I gained weight, or I didn't want to have sex, or, some kind of, and I'm like, keep trying. This is worth it. This
Mhm.
is worth it. This one didn't work for you, but there are so many out there that will. And
Yeah.
the other thing is, don't get it from your primary care physician. Go to a psychiatrist who is trained because they know about all the different medications and they know how they interact with different things and they can get you on the right path. Whereas your primary care physician, they're dealing with the flu and sprained ankles and rashes, and so they cannot
Yeah.
know
They can't be an
enough.
expert in everything.
They can't be an expert in that. And they know, the mainstream ones, and they'll put you on one. If it doesn't work, they'll just increase it. If that doesn't work, they'll switch to another. So it's just like a trial and error.
Mhm.
If you go to a specialist, an actual psychiatrist, that is what they do.
Yeah.
That is what they know and that is what they do. And I always tell people that don't just go to your OBGYN and say, I think I'm depressed. Can I have, this medication that I saw a commercial for? Because those people looked really happy. That's not the way to go.
Right. Yes. And psychiatrists are the ones who can prescribe medications. Psychologists cannot. Social workers cannot. So
Right.
if you're
But they're
seeing a
good to talk
psychologist or a
to.
social worker for talk therapy, they
Hmm.
won't be able to prescribe to you. So that's also a good distinction to make.
But they are so helpful. The
Oh
talk
my God.
therapy
Yes.
combined is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's been a journey for me. It's been at least a couple decades of, trying this, trying that, doing different therapies, trying different medicines. And, but then when it starts working, it's like, oh my goodness, why didn't I do this 10 years ago?
Right. Yes. Yes.
Not that I'm
So,
saying everybody needs medication
no.
either. I mean, I'm just saying this was my experience.
Mhm.
And for people out there who have reservations about seeking therapy or about getting on medication, do what you need to do to improve my life is improved now by 80%.
Yeah. Yeah.
And getting through that breast cancer journey, I can't imagine doing that without mental health support.
Right. So what's it like now? Your life 80% better. What does that look like?
Oh my goodness. Well, I won't say I'm never in a bad mood. That's impossible. And, there's always going to be some times that you struggle. You're not going to be 100%. Sometimes you're going to have bad days. Anxiety is the one that pops up the most for me. It's the one, I don't think I struggle with the depression part of it now. I think that one's really under control, but I would definitely say that anxiety still likes to rear its ugly head, and I recognize it for what it is. And I do what I need to do in those moments to bring myself back down. And otherwise, though, my life is amazing. I have a job that I absolutely love that doesn't even feel like work. I have my own business, so I work for myself, which is amazing. I work from home. I have amazing clients. I have two incredible kids who are thriving, and I have an amazing relationship of going on 8 years now, someone who just, treats me so well. And, it's just such a healthy relationship versus when I was unhealthy, I had unhealthy relationships,
Mhm.
including a marriage that lasted for 17 years. So when
Mhm.
you change, a lot changes. And I know that there are those dark times where you just feel like it won't ever change. Like you feel like, oh, this is life. This is what life is like. It just sucks. I'm in a bad mood. I'm crying all the time. I don't like my job. I don't have a good relationship. And the thing is, when you change, your mind changes, your life changes.
Mhm. Beautiful.
So anyone who feels that despair really just needs to go, okay, well, this person went through it and this is what's on the other side. So just have a little faith that
Mm.
the place that you're in now, that's not what life is. That's not what life is. No matter who you are, no matter what you've been through, no matter what traumas you've had, that's not where you're destined to be for the rest of your life.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why we're here. That's why we're having these conversations. One last question. So if we're at bottom, whether that's physical health, whether we're battling something like cancer or some other, chronic pain or physically debilitating situation, or it's a mentally debilitating situation. What sorts of things, like where did you start with your nutrition and your exercise? Like what's the easiest place to start? Because a lot of times, we think about going to the gym. Well, oh God, we can't do that. That's way too much. Like, where do you start?
Oh, yeah. I love that question because when clients first come to me, they think that I'm going to give them a big list. Like, here's your diet, here's what you eat, here's what you don't eat, here's your exercise routine. Boom, go for it. And
Yeah,
like you
that's
said, you're like,
overwhelming.
oh my goodness. And thinking from never going to the gym to I'm going to go 5 days a week for an hour and kill myself. You're just never going to get started
Yeah,
because it's overwhelm. It's paralysis by overwhelm. And you can start with any one tiny step. There's not one place for anyone to start. For me personally, after I, got through my treatments and started, having some energy, I started with just stretching. I'd had 3 surgeries, major surgeries, mastectomy and 2 reconstruction surgeries where they cut through the muscles in my back.
mm,
And, I had skin grafts, I had all this stuff. And I was really stiff and sore from it. And I literally just started with stretches, so that I could get my arms up over my head and reach my arms all the way out to the side. And going from being a boot camp workout instructor and going to hot yoga 3 days a week, that was really a humbling experience to, and once I started getting my range of motion back a little bit, I started doing some beginner yoga videos that I found online, and I could do them for maybe 5 minutes or 10. My muscles had gotten so weak, I was just shaking, and I could hardly hold just basic yoga poses. And so anyone can do it. I'm back to my HIIT workouts now. I'm back to lifting weights in the gym. I'm back to my hot yoga. It took a couple years of steady putting one foot in front of the other to get back there, but anyone can. Anyone can do it. You just have to figure out what's one easy step. If you're trying to get healthier, maybe you're not drinking enough water and you could just start tracking your water intake. Maybe you eat no vegetables in a whole day and you just need to make sure you eat one vegetable at dinner every night. It can be one tiny step, and that is not just for physical, that's for anything that you're going through, any major thing that you're dealing with. I had to do that with my divorce. You can't just walk in, you can't just go, oh, I'm unhappy, and walk into a lawyer's office and file when you've been married for 17 years and you have 2 kids together. There's a whole lot of things you got to work through. And so I just started, one step was go to see a counselor and just talk about it and start thinking about my options and what am I thinking about it? What are my fears? You have to just take one tiny step.
Yeah. And even if that's, like you said, eating one baby carrot at lunchtime, and then celebrate that, because that's one thing you did for yourself better than you did yesterday. Or
Yeah. And
doing
I always tell
a
people,
minute and a half of stretches, it's
yeah,
more than you did yesterday. And that
if you,
1% every day.
yeah, if you improve 1% a week,
Mhm.
that's 52% in a year.
Yeah.
Think what you could accomplish if you improved by 52% in any area of your life. That's huge. And a year is not really that long. If you think about
Yeah.
your physical fitness, your diet, your health, your mental health, improving by 52% in a year. And if you think about how long has your issue been a problem in
How
your
long have you been
life?
struggling? Yeah.
Right. If you're struggling with something for 20 years and you could improve it by 52% in a year, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, huge things can happen when you just start with one tiny step.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story and inspiring our listeners with your story of transformation and triumph over both physical and mental health. You really are an amazing woman. And yeah, just thank you so much.
So thank you so much. It was wonderful being here.
Thank you for listening. Remember that you are loved, you are worthy, you are valuable, you are meant for more, and that it really does get better. If you are in crisis, there are numbers that you can call or text to get the help that you need. That information for Canada and the US is in the description below each episode. If you are in immediate crisis, please call 911. We love you, and I hope you'll listen again.